realtors. Okay. The previous segment, for those of you listening live, we do the show live Monday through Friday from 7 to 8 o'clock, or as I tried to do it, was it yesterday, the day before, at 6 o'clock?
A little earlier. You were just on Eastern time, Brad.
I was at Eastern time. So if you hadn't heard the previous segment, we referenced the point about the fact that Kamala Harris surrounded herself with all the big important people, all the celebrities, and one of them being Oprah. And I made the comment about how Oprah was generally respected by most women, and most men are like, it's Oprah, right? Okay. And the power of Oprah. I don't know how long ago this was. I don't know, 15 years ago. One of my family members worked at the Nordstrom. At that time, there was only one, the one out there in West County Center. Okay. And at the time, Oprah's show was on between 4 and 5 in the afternoon, I believe. It came on at 4 and went till 5 when they went to their local newscast at 5 o'clock. And the one show she did, the theme of the show was, at least part of the show was, ladies, are you wearing the wrong bra size? And they had a woman who was this professional bra fitter. And she talked about how, and she had some statistics that like 6 out of 10 women had the wrong bra size on. I don't know how in the world they knew that, but that's what she said, okay? And she had models come up on stage, and they would show them, they would have them come out, and they would show them in the bra that they had actually worn to show that day. And then they went backstage, and they put a different bra on them and fit them in the right way. And they go, oh, look at the difference. Okay, so in a very slight mention, she says that, ladies, if you go to Nordstrom, they have professional bra fitters at Nordstrom who can help you figure out exactly what your true bra size is. Guess what happened, John?
You volunteered at Nordstrom.
No.
You suddenly became a volunteer.
No, Nordstrom's was overrun with women showing up, some of them that afternoon, and for sure the next day, to the point where they had so many women show up, they didn't know what to do. And the lingerie department, I think that was on the second floor of that store there. I can't remember anymore. But they had so many women, they didn't know what to do. And I think that what they actually started doing, they started writing down people's names and like putting them on like a waiting list, or saying, well, can you come back tomorrow at 10 o'clock? And, actually scheduling them. Once again, the power of Oprah. Well, this time it didn't work. And what's sort of interesting about it is there's a big controversy now. If you saw, the number came out that the Harris campaign paid Oprah $1 million. You've heard that, right?
Yep.
Did you hear the TMZ reporter who chased her down and she denied that? You know this story?
No, I saw the headline, Brad, but I didn't click on it. So what happened? What did she have to say?
The TMZ reporter chased her down and asked her that bluntly, and she said no. Now, here's where it gets sort of interesting. You can't get away with this with the elections because John knows this all too well. There's this thing called the FEC, which is the federal component of what we have in the state of Missouri called the MEC, which essentially is what would you call that? The organization that essentially oversees the ethics of in Missouri it's called, is it the Missouri Ethics Commission? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's right. It's a regulatory body that makes sure that folks follow the law for whatever the existing law is for campaign finance and spending and fundraising.
Right. And in the federal, it's actually called the Federal Election Commission, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that what it stands for?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So in her declaratory statements to the FEC, she's got 2 payments to Harpo Productions. Now, maybe we're talking about the Bill Clinton era. What is the definition of is? So when the TMZ reporter confronts Oprah and she denies that she got $1 million, is she saying she personally didn't get $1 million? But Harpo did get $1 million.
Yeah, which for normal people is the exact same thing.
Right.
But she can say, well, it didn't go to me. It just went to my company.
Right. Well, who owns the company? Well, I do, of course. Well, hold on a minute now. Let's think about this for a minute.
And Brad, wouldn't that be like saying that Attorney General First Puppy Liberty Bell Rose didn't give you any money for campaign advertising, but gave, in fact, your radio stations and your incorporation or your LLC.
Well,
he didn't give money to Brad Hildebrand.
Well, but once again, that's splitting hairs. It's like, now my daughter being the attorney. Okay, now here we go again. Now, she would say, well, she answered correctly. because she is not, because probably Harpo is incorporated, and she is not the corporation. Legally,
True.
she answered correctly that she didn't get $1 million, but she didn't volunteer that Harpo got $1 million. But once again, in the eyes of the law, if you have a corporation, if you have John Combest Incorporated, and you own 100% of the stock, and someone says, well, I gave John Combest Incorporated money, you could say, well, I didn't get it. And you would say that would be correct because of the fact that you personally didn't get it, your corporation got it. But that's
true. That's correct.
It's two separate entities. So
that's splitting hairs.
Well,
and it's also lying, and it's not being – that would be like giving Beyonce's team or her production company a bunch of money, and then Beyonce being like, I don't get paid for my endorsement.
There is a thing in the FCC when somebody runs afoul of the FCC. This has been going on for years with the FCC. And most of the time, if you fall on your sword and you get caught doing something illegal with the FCC and you say, you know what, I screwed up. I shouldn't have done that. I didn't file that report on time. I've never done this before. It was all my fault. Normally they'll go like, okay, fine. We're going to, send you a nasty gram and maybe send you a fine. Okay, but if you try to mislead the FCC, that is called lack of candor, and that's the kiss of death, with them.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, the guy who is no longer with us, Bob Romanek, who is the very controversial owner of these radio stations on the East Side, which it was sad. All of them went off the air. They're dark now. The towers of one of them, I drive by one of them from time to time in 64 over there in Illinois. The towers are still there. The equipment, I think, is all gone. That's how he got nailed, because of the fact that what he did was, I don't know if you know the story, Bob Romanek was a convicted felon. And in the FCC world, you can't hold an FCC license when you're a convicted felon. And he had his son essentially say that he owned the radio stations. Well, his son, and this is sort of sad, his son, I think, was in his mid-40s, and he died. He got some disease and died. And all of a sudden, Bob Romanek was sitting there with these stations, which he claimed were owned by his son, but yet his son was no longer alive anymore. And he made a couple comments about the fact, well, I don't own the radio stations. Well, who does? Your son's died. What's his will say? And nobody could really ever come up with the what do you call it? The progression of the ownership when he passed away, who actually ended up with
the chain of custody.
Chain of custody. Exactly. Chain of custody with the radio stations. And essentially, Bob Romanek lied. And the FCC nailed him on it. It's lack of candor. And once again, if he probably would have said, you know what, I screwed up. And, my son did own the radio stations. And, my son died. I should have just filed, something with him that, we were going to put those stations in a trust or something like that. But no, he essentially, sidestepped the FCC. Once again, sometimes it's easier. It's just like my new favorite drop. You heard this before? Let me play it real quick here. You haven't heard this. I used this the other day. I saw this the other day. I thought it was really funny. Okay, I'm going to run this like you heard. Tell me if you can hear this. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Hi, officer. I'm so sorry for speeding.
What is your first name?
Frida.
And last name?
Go, ma'am.
You are free to go, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's a skit, right?
You get it? Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But Brad, when you talk about like people lying about the FCC, that would kind of be like somebody saying they own radio stations, but they're really just leasing them, right?
John, I'm not going to go there because of the fact that I don't want to get. Well, you know what? I've only gotten one cease and desist letter in my life from one cease and desist letter ever from Rick and Tracy Ellis, and maybe it's time for another cease and desist letter.
Hey, speaking of that station, Brad, I listened to The Reckoning, which is a drive time show from 4 to 6. Yesterday, Ryan Haidt was promoting an event that Bill Eigel is going to be at. Bill Eigel is going to speak tonight. I looked it up. He's going to speak at Grace Church, which is over like 270, like McKelvey, that area, by Pattonville High School.
Right.
He's going to speak tonight at 6:30, and here's what it says. It's called the Civic Engagement Forum, and the name of the talk is, or the title of the talk is, Where We Go From Here with Bill Eigel. We'll have a look at where we stand as a nation, how to address Amendment 3, and how Christians can best work together to move forward in 2025, 6:30 p.m. tonight at Grace Church, St. Louis. And shout out to Ryan Haidt for mentioning that on the air. I wouldn't have known it if I hadn't been listening to Ryan Haidt's show. Now, Brad, I take it as a member of unofficial member of Mike Elam for county executive, you'll be at Bill Eigel's talk with a recorder. You'll be like one of those trackers and one of those opposition research guys, right, Brad?
No, I like Bill Eigel. I told you this, but see,
I know that.
Here's what bothers me about this whole situation, okay? And you're maybe not the right person to talk about because I know your feelings on this, okay? The people have spoken, okay? Amendment 3 passed. Give it a rest. Just move on down the road. Now, I know there are people out there going, oh my God, he can't believe he just said that. He wants to kill babies. Once again, you could use the same example. You could say, okay, the people have spoken. Donald Trump is our next new president. He's going to be president number 47. There are going to be people out there go, oh my God, we're doing everything we can to get him out. And once again, what did the Democrats do for 4 years? They did everything they could to get him out of office. They impeached him twice. They made his life miserable. And once again, I say that's a really good example of what happened to the Democrats is that so many people saw, okay, we get what's going on here. They're still butthurt because of the fact that he beat Hillary, and Hillary was our girl, and we wanted the first woman president. We wanted Hillary, and she didn't make it, so we're going to make his life miserable. I say the same thing with this Amendment 3 thing. Republicans, be the better person and essentially say, the people have spoken, let's move on down the road. I know you don't agree with that, but once again, they're already talking about, we're going to put another amendment on the ballot in 2026 and go, okay, whatever.
A wise man named Brad Hildebrand this week on this show expounded upon the pendulum theory, because Brad Hildebrand has a pendulum theory.
I do.
In which, whether it's the Francis House School District or whether it's National Democrats, a pendulum starts too far on one side, then goes back too far on the other side, and then comes back toward the middle. Brad, I would make the argument that Missouri was under, shall we say, liberal abortion laws for a while. Republicans, thanks to a trigger law, made the pendulum move the other way toward the pro-life side. This vote by Missourians, and you're right, Brad, it passed, 53-47 or 52-48?
Right.
Missourians voted for this particular amendment, and I think we're going to see in the coming months, Brad, that Amendment 3 does indeed, and we're not going to split hairs right now on the show because we've covered this before, Amendment 3 does indeed allow abortions generally up until the point of conception, as long as you have a doctor who will play ball and say the mental health of the mother is at risk, we need to allow this abortion. Brad, by using your own argument about the pendulum theory, I think the abortion law has now swung so far to the left that some Missourians are going to say, whoa, we're allowing abortions at 7 months now? That's way further than we need. And then Missourians will get a chance to make their voice heard on this again.
But see, you're making my point that what the Amendment 3 people did, they overshot their deal. I mean, they to the point where, like, we're going to go from no abortions to abortions. And by the way, you said something about you said something about conception.
Okay, well, nitpick the word I used. Okay, but go ahead. Okay. I get your point, though. But you're saying that the pendulum has swung too far to the left.
Yes, but to the point where if you just keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, it's to the point where, look, let's find some middle ground, okay? Instead of like you're saying, to the point where conceivably, and like what you're saying is essentially the new, and I'm not the legal expert, but I've heard people talk about, and this has mainly been pro-Republican people have said, look what the new Amendment 3 did. If some woman's supposed to give birth on the 20th of February, she could go into the hospital on the 19th and say, I want an abortion. Isn't that essentially what the new law could ultimately turn out to be?
What no one disputes is that the mental health of the mother, the health of the mother, which would include mental health, can be used as an exception to allow abortion past what's generally considered the point of viability. Right. So, Brad, I don't think we disagree on this, but the reason why we're going to continue arguing about this is that Republicans in some districts believe that this is a winning issue. And continuing to fight about this is definitely a winning issue for their 2026 primary campaigns. It's definitely an issue in conservative districts for their 2028 campaigns and Republican primaries. And for Democrats, particularly in progressive areas or what they consider to be left-leaning, they have gotten a great response from pro-choice voters on this. So they want to continue the fight as well, Brad. Everybody benefits by continuing to argue about abortion. And I would just point out that once again, you are taking a way too rational and diplomatic view of these issues, Brad. I know that sounds like a backhanded compliment, but it's a compliment nonetheless.
Well, but once again, the problem with this is, and see, I disagree with you because I think, there have been people who have come out and said if the Republicans would back off of the abortion thing, and the interesting thing about it was, how many times did this come up with Trump? Hardly at all. I mean, to the point where, and once again, this is just me. This is anecdotal to me. There are certain triggers, and believe it or not, if I went back to university, I would ask my professor where the trigger room was, where I could go, and when he said something, I could go into the room and untrigger myself. But there's certain triggers in my mind that when people start saying things, I'm like, my brain just shuts down. I'm like, okay, I'm done. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just to the point where, and I hearken back to Jim White. And the big bumper, you remember him from KMOX.
The big bumper, late night. He had a late night show on KMOX. For anybody under the age of 70, may not remember Jim White, but yes.
He would start off his show almost every time and say, here's what we're not going to talk about. And he would give his list of, like, at the time it was busing and things like that. And he says, because nobody is ever going to convince someone on the other side that they're right or wrong. You know what I mean? It's to the point where you're either pro-abortion or against abortion. There are not too many people in the middle. And it's the same thing, that's I mean, what I meant in that respect. You're either pro-busing or against busing, nobody in the middle. And that's the same thing with abortion and so many other things. And to the point where I hate to see issues that divide us as people. I hate to see the fact that we had this whole situation that the day after the election, I personally had several people who I know who essentially were mad at me because of the fact that I got Trump elected. Now, how many times?
You did, single-handedly, Brad.
Yeah, right. I wish I had that power because, you know what? I wouldn't be doing this damn show. I'd be sleeping till about 9 o'clock. I'd be political. I'd be a political consultant. I'd be saying, "Hey, you want me to change people's lives? Change people's minds? How many people you got? 2 million? I'll take 10 cents a head." You know what I mean? To the point where, like, write me the check and I'll. Now, see, I hate to see the divisiveness of our nation. I mean, I really do.
But I don't. Let me interrupt, Brad. I don't think I understand where you're coming from there, but it's never going to change. And if Democrats, let's say in Missouri, didn't have abortion to run on in 2024, what were they going to complain about? Like, you can't point to the economy. You can't point to Medicaid. We have a zillion people on Medicaid, and we're funding it well. There's not much in Missouri state government, if you're a Democrat, that you can really complain about that Republicans aren't working on, except for abortion. So, I mean, if I'm a Democrat, I got to pick something. Like, you can't knock Democrats for picking up this issue.
Okay, two things. This is segment B, or B block. C block. Two things I want to talk about, which are basically the same, of how our state government is screwed up. Okay, that's coming next in C block. And John's going, okay, what's Brad going to say now, right? And by the way, do you really think I'd go out and see Bill Eigel tonight?
Yeah, of course you would.
Okay.
I mean, here's the thing. Now that he doesn't have the state highway patrol at all of his events, I think you feel like you have a free pass to just hold your iPhone up and then put a wacky, one of your wacky iMovie captions underneath it. And then you could post it to join the Westplex chamber, or no, join the chamber.today. And you could say, look, we have a St. Charles leader out in St. Louis County launching his unofficial soft launch of his campaign for county exec. And then you could take that video to Mike Elam and Mr. Winsfield and be like, hey, just want you guys to know, Eigel's all over the site. If you guys want to buy banner ads, here's the price.
Do the old Me Too
That's
thing.
That's what I would do, but I'm not a sales guy, Brad.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?